Hi, I'm Steve Clemons, and I have a question. Did President Trump just get a wake-up call after a string of local elections went to Democrats, including New York City's Zohran Mamdani? Let's get to the bottom line. Democratic politicians really won handily against their Republican opponents, some of whom were backed by President Trump in 3 local elections in the U.S. last week: Virginia, New Jersey, and New York City. In the capital of capitalism, New Yorkers voted for a Democratic socialist mayor, Zohran Mamdani, who energized the base and won despite tepid support from his own party and a massive coalition of Republicans and Democrat megadonors who wanted him to lose. Democrats say there's a clear message from voters to President Trump 10 months into his presidency. But what is the message? And how will the results impact both parties' thinking as they head to the midterm elections next year and beyond? Today, we're talking with Republican strategist John Feehery, who's author of The Honest Contrarian and Other Stories About Washington, D.C. John, it's great to have you with us today. Thank you so much. Look, you're sit in the middle of the Republican power network in Washington, D.C. Now, I'm asking you to sort of tell us how that world feels right now. How does President Trump feel? Was this a wake-up call for Republicans, or was this a blip?
This is a wake-up call for Republicans. If you look at all of these elections, they are all home teams winning on their home field, but they exceeded the point spread. They did a lot better than people thought. If you look at New Jersey, Citarelli lost huge. Winston-Sears lost huge. And then, no one really thought...
Just for our audience, Winston-Sears in Virginia, Citarelli in New Jersey.
And everyone expected both those races to be a lot closer. In Virginia, it was a complete wipeout. Now, if you look at these elections, they all make sense as to why the Republicans lost, especially Virginia. You have the government shut down. You have all these Doge workers who are angry at the president. And it's really a purple, kind of bluish state anyway. New Jersey's always been a blue state. And if you look at the tradition, it's always in these traditional off-year elections that the president's party loses. And that happened both times. If you look at New York, Mamdani was running against a guy who, Andrew Cuomo, who really should be in jail. The Republicans hated this guy. Curtis Sliwa was a joker. And so Mamdani won kind of walking away in an election that he should have won.
To that point, President Trump came out and endorsed Cuomo.
Right.
A Democratic former governor of New York, a son of a power boss governor of New York, in the Democrat power family, and President Trump endorsed him.
It was the weirdest thing because Cuomo was one of the president's biggest critics when he was governor of New York. So strange elections. Mamdani was still able to win and win convincingly. The fact of the matter is, for the president, it was a wake-up call. And if you look at how he reacted, his immediate reaction was, let's get rid of the filibuster, because he knows that he has to get his domestic agenda through, and he's not going to be able to do it with Democrats who are emboldened and really don't want to help him out and get his domestic agenda through. So the president has been spending most of his last 3 months, ever since the One Big Beautiful Bill passed, focused on foreign policy. This is not unusual for a president. Presidents want legacies. They want to do peace deals. But he forgot that you have a domestic economy, and people don't really care in America what you're doing internationally. They want to know what you're doing for them, and they feel the pinch of affordability. And if you talk to White House analysts or people in the White House, they say the affordability message was something we got to get back on, and we got to talk about inflation. We got to talk about how we solve these problems. But the president really has not been paying that much attention to the domestic economy, which so much reminds me of what happened to George H.W. Bush in the
Read my lips.
Read my lips. He broke the tax pledge. Yeah. But he had 91% approval ratings, and then he lost the next election. You got to focus on people back home.
But the Democrat stronghold on the Hispanic voter, on the black voter, even on youth, was thrown into jeopardy by the magic of President Trump's last election, where he began to draw significantly from all these groups who were disappointed in Democrats. And now you look at the fact that those numbers are back for Democrats: 93, 94, 95%, even 98% from the black community. And 22-point swings in Hispanic votes in Hispanic districts in New Jersey that Donald Trump basically gave up, if you were to kind of look at what his vote was. Are we now at peak Trump?
Well, you could say that. And the fact is that every day he's in office is a day he's facing the end of his term. and he becomes much more of a lame duck, which is why he wants to get rid of the filibuster. The fact is that on certain things, I looked at, for example, in Georgia when we lost 2 seats, we lost all. We wanted to flip the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. We lost all those races. Youth vote in New York City, 84% of young women voted for Mamdani, which tells me that they are radicalized and they are ready to go for the Democrats. And you didn't really have a corresponding number of male vote coming out for the Republicans or for Cuomo, which makes a little bit of sense. The Hispanic vote in New Jersey really did flip. And for Republicans, that's really troubling because they redistricted in Texas with the assumption that they were going to be able to win some Hispanic seats. Now, the question on the Hispanic vote, is this about immigration and over-enforcement of immigration, or is it about the economy, the promise of the economy that hasn't really come through for a lot of his working-class Hispanic voters? And I don't know the answer to that, but I think both could be true. And if you look at the black vote, Winsome Sears was a black candidate in Virginia, and she still lost. She only got 10% of the black vote in Virginia. So this coalition that Trump had really kind of thought about that he had created in 2024, every election takes 3 or 4 times to actually have a permanent coalition. That's not permanent yet.
Let's talk about New York City for a minute. Zohran Mamdani, very interesting guy, youngest mayor, I think, in a century, Muslim. Many painted him as an anti-Semite, and a democratic socialist of the sort that AOC is and paints herself, and I think Senator Bernie Sanders as well. But let's listen to Zohran Mamdani.
We will hold bad landlords to account because the Donald Trumps of our city have grown far too comfortable taking advantage of their tenants. We will put an end to the culture of corruption that has allowed billionaires like Trump to evade taxation and exploit tax breaks. We will stand alongside unions and expand labor protections because we know, just as Donald Trump does, that when working people have ironclad rights, the bosses who seek to extort them become very small indeed. New York will remain a city of immigrants, a city built by immigrants, powered by immigrants, and as of tonight, led by an immigrant.
Powerful energy in that room, John. How is your world hearing this?
Well, I think of Mamdani, and I think of someone who ran a really excellent grassroots campaign against really bad opponents and was able to win because he had a great message. And his message is, let's go after the billionaires. Nobody really likes billionaires, except maybe if the billionaires who know other billionaires. Everyone wants to be a billionaire, but they don't really like billionaires. There's this general sense out there that we live in a new Gilded Age where working class Americans are not getting a fair break. And you know who ran and won on that message? Donald Trump. And so Mamdani, in many ways, is putting a socialist tinge on the Trump "Make America First" motif. And the fact is that Trump has been largely anti-immigrant in his rhetoric. He's tried to modify it somewhat, but that reflects kind of the Republican base. And New York is not a pro-immigrant city, especially it always has been. But you're not going to win being anti-immigrant in New York City. And Mamdani, I think, is a very talented political figure. The fact that he was able to raise so much money in small donations, and then he used the system to have the state actually kick in $13 million in matching funds. So he's a smart enough guy to figure out how to win with the system while he's trying to topple the system.
Is Mamdani's message, his enthusiasm, the way he appealed to people, what he represents in Democratic politics, is that something Democrats should now go national with?
Well, I think the energy, definitely. I'm not sure. Giving free stuff away to everybody, it doesn't work everywhere. And most people are very skeptical of that. I think a lot of his policy proposals are kind of ridiculous on their face, and they do not translate well. I do think that the president is going to try to call Mamdani a communist, and you've seen him.
Well, just wait. Let's listen to the president.
Yeah.
We have a choice between communism and Common sense. Does that make sense to you? Common sense. It's common sense or communism. And you know, you take a look back 1,000 years, it hasn't worked. If it worked, we'd be using it, I guess, but it hasn't worked. Our opponents are offering an economic nightmare. We're delivering an economic miracle.
What do you think about the president's remarks? I mean, I think a lot of people are asking, did capitalism work out so well for you?
Well, I mean, I'm a free market capitalist and believe very much in capitalism. I'm going to be very interested to see how successful Mamdani is in governing New York. I think he's going to become a poster child for the communism tale that Republicans are going to tell. But Republicans have to be careful, because if he turns out to be popular, that could be something that Democrats decide to run on. We don't know how he's going to govern, but he's a very attractive candidate.
You know, I think Trump's still very confident in himself and his place in American politics, but he also talked about the shutdown. And I have to say, at the time of this recording with you right now, we're still in a government shutdown now, more than 5 weeks long. And I guess my question to you is was that a brilliant move by the Democrats if Donald Trump is saluting the fact that that shutdown gave them the edge in this race?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little skeptical that the shutdown really kind of drove things in New Jersey and New York. I mean, obviously, Doge and the shutdown had a dramatic impact in Virginia. You know, Trump was not on the ballot per se, so no one could vote for him. But everybody who voted for the Democrats were voting against Donald Trump. So he might not have been on the ballot, but he was certainly on the minds of many Democratic voters. And if you look at what happened like 3 weeks before this No Kings rally, Democrats are energized. They do not like Donald Trump. They have never liked Donald Trump. And they are more energized against Trump than Republicans are energized for the Republicans and for Trump. So this is going to be a big challenge for the midterms for Republicans. Can they win with Trump not on the ballot, but on the top of minds of Republican voters? Because they're going to need to make that. And you know, I look at all these midterm elections as, is it going to be a checks and balances election, or is it going to be an obstruction election? Can Republicans use this shutdown as an example of crazy TD Trump derangement syndrome shutdowns and really shutting down any kind of economic progress? Can they make it a do-nothing Democrats, which we tried to do in 2002, or will checks and balances, and we need to put a check on President Trump and his excesses, will that be the governing thing? And will it matter for all these redistricted districts? You know, that's the other thing that's going on, this drive to redistrict, to make sure that Trump can win all of these, keep a majority with redistricting.
Spend a moment on that. There's redistricting in Texas, and now there are other states lining up, you know, try to redistrict districts to squeeze out a few more Democrats out of the races and squeeze in a few more Republicans. Well, California just passed an initiative that allows them to do a very unique redistricting. And Republicans are filing all these legal challenges against it while they're basically celebrating what happened in Texas and in other states in the United States. I mean, is that not hypocritical?
No, in politics, nothing is hypocritical. Everything is just what you do to kind of protect yourself. And if you're Kevin Kiley in California, and you want to file a lawsuit to preserve your district, because he's going to be in big trouble. He's going to be in a plus 15 Harris district if he runs in the district that he's in now. So, you know, I call this almost ethnic cleansing, political cleansing of the different states. And, you know, it makes it awfully difficult to bring these states together to come up with any kind of political compromises, because they are in two different
So what's
worlds.
2026 going to look like for you, from your perspective, particularly in the House? Do Democrats stand a good chance of taking the House in 2026?
Well, if you look at all the latest polls, there's about 209 safe Republican seats, 209 safe Democratic seats, and there's only like 17 seats that are up for grabs. And the question is, on these swing seats, can you find someone, and there's not that many seats that are Republican held that Harris won. I think there's only like 2 or 3. So it's, I think the Republicans can keep the House, which would be historically unprecedented. It hasn't happened very often. I think we did it when George Bush and Denny Hastert was the Speaker of the House. But it's very, very difficult to keep, even with these tight seats, even with this small.
And these are seats that, as you said, are swing seats, and where independent voters play a huge role.
Independent voters play a huge role. But either way, what happens, there's going to be a tight majority either way. And so whoever the speakers can Hakeem Jeffries kind of keep his guys together. Can Mike Johnson come up with a legislative agenda? It's really open, and It's an open question, and I think that the person who's most on the ballot, even though he's not going to be on the ballot, is Donald Trump. And how does he react over the next 8 months? Does he focus on the domestic economy? Does he still try to kind of globetrot and do all these, peace deals that people don't really care about? At the end of the day, the number one thing is, can the American people feel good about their pocketbooks, and they feel good about keeping things going for Donald Trump, or they feel nervous and feel frustrated with the economy as it is?
Donald Trump is now pushing the Republican-controlled Senate to get rid of the filibuster, and I'm just interested in where this train wreck goes.
Well, I'm an old House guy, and so I've always hated the filibuster, because when you're in the House, you can pass it. It's a majoritarian institution. You pass what you can. You send it to the Senate, and the Senate would usually screw it up from our perspective. Having a minority be able to shut the government down for an extended period of time is completely outrageous, because it's irresponsible, and it's a waste of money, and it drives me crazy that the Senate's able to do that. From Trump's perspective, he knows that he's not going to be able to get 60 votes on anything that he wants to get done, because Democrats are just not going to do it. They're not going to help him. And so is it enough just to have stuff pass the House and languish in the Senate and run against that? No, his belief is only if he's able to pass his agenda can he have a positive
But there's
legacy.
a difference between short-term and long-term, right? So many of these senators are going to be in office and around a lot longer than Donald Trump. And they fear, just as Joe Manchin and Sinema did when they blocked the Democrats from getting rid of the filibuster, that when the other party comes to power, they're going to pass all of these things with a 50+1 vote, some of which they consider really crazy and dangerous.
And I do think that this government shutdown has driven a lot of Republicans completely crazy, and they are almost radicalized enough, not enough to actually pass the filibuster, unless this, ironically, if the Democrats join with enough Republicans, they could get rid of the filibuster, and they would be playing the long game, while Donald Trump would be playing. He doesn't care about the long game. He cares about his legacy. He's not really a policy guy. He's not really all that. He wants his own personal success, and he's not. He has pays little attention to Senate rules. Doesn't really care about all the niceties. He just wants to get his agenda through. So yeah, he's not playing the long game. And part of his belief is that if we get all my agenda through, the long game will be good for Republicans, because we'll make America great again.
And we've already talked in the show about Marjorie Taylor Greene in the past, who seems to be pivoting a very different direction, that some on the MAGA right are not where, certain of kind of the Republican national security establishment have been on Israel, and they're asking really important questions. How do you see that divide playing itself out right now?
Well, it's actually ironic that the Heritage Foundation got itself in this kind of trouble, because it was the Heritage Foundation that had within the Heritage Foundation, they had a project to brand
Project 2025.
Well, it's different than that. It was a project specifically about Israel. And the project was brand anybody who was anti-Israel as anti-Semitic. And you saw the Trump administration do that to many universities, saying you are being anti-Semitic because you're allowing these anti-Israel protests. And so, if you're a Tucker Carlson or Marjorie Taylor Greene, you believe, or Tom Massey or Rand Paul, you can be against what Israel was doing in Gaza, which many people thought was a massacre, a genocide, and still not be anti-Semitic. Whereas people in the conservative right said, no, if you're anti-Israel on this particular thing, you're probably an anti-Semite. And so at the grassroots level, more and more Republicans, more and more conservatives grew very concerned about what was happening in Gaza, which is why you saw Donald Trump be so hard on Bibi Netanyahu, saying, you know what, we got to bring this thing to an end, because it's politically losing a lot of steam, not just with Democrats, but also with Republicans. What is anti-Semitism in the context of Israel? That's a debate that is roiling the Republican Party. And the irony is there aren't that many Jews who vote for Republicans. It's actually, and what Tucker Carlson said, Christian Zionism is something that he despises so much. Christian Zionism has been a huge part of the Republican base for quite a long time.
Sure.
This idea that evangelical Christians believe that Israel is, and you saw this debate with Ted Cruz and Tucker Carlson, that Israel is...
it was a nasty debate.
It was a very nasty debate. And, Tucker Carlson, when he doesn't have the world of Fox to kind of keep him, he's saying all kinds of things that a lot of Republicans and conservatives don't like. And he's been saying that for quite a while.
Let me just finish with a question about the economy. You look at inflation, which hasn't been tamed yet. That contributes to economic anxiety at the kitchen table and worrying about not only jobs, but the price of peanut butter, meat, and eggs. And are they possibly going to lose on the economy as Republicans?
Trump did very well with the economy in his first term because he was able to get a rapid increase in wages for working class voters. You're not seeing that this time around, and whatever increase in wages you're getting, totally dealt with, or tariffs don't really have an impact on inflation, but the prices of groceries are very high. I hear that from my wife all the time. And all the other things that lead to economic anxiety. What the tariffs have done has made it very difficult for businesses to understand what the right price is. And the fact that tariffs are in and out and all over the place, it's very difficult to establish a normal free market system because you don't know what the prices have to be. And that
which also impacts hiring.
Which impacts hiring. The unemployment rate's still not that bad. The thing that I'm looking out for, and this has to do with energy prices, price of water, and jobs, and that's AI. Trump has totally embraced the idea of AI, which could become a big problem for him because the people who are going to lose their jobs through AI are Trump voters. They're not just working class, but also white-collar voters who thought they had a great thing going, and now they're going to either not get hired or not get jobs.
We're seeing massive layoffs that are AI-related now.
Massive.
Companies like Amazon. Another dimension of it, if I can add to what you just said, is that in Virginia, the total energy usage of the state, 25% of it, is for data centers related to AI. When you look at the massive increase in energy demand, prices of energy is going through the roof just as you're having the impact on labor from the impact of AI.
So this is a real problem for this White House. And you know who's getting really rich with AI? The billionaires. They're getting richer and richer, which feeds into this idea that these people don't care about me because they're increasing my energy costs, they're laying me off, and they're making all this money. And so Trump has to be very, very careful on how he handles this outside of the typical economic issues. Now, I think this is going to be a populist uprising that the president has to control or understand and message correctly.
Well, John, it's always great to talk to you. I could talk to you for hours. Republican strategist John Feehery, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Steve.
So what's the bottom line? The Democratic Party has new green sprouts of opportunity in a political system that's now dominated at the top by President Donald Trump and his Republican Party. A range of Democratic candidates succeeded despite all of Trump's bluster. What's interesting is that, in my view, they didn't really succeed because of outstanding leadership in their own Democratic Party. Each unique victory depended on the candidates and the issues facing the voters there. Could the leaders of the Democrats in the House and Senate, who are Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, really win? In my view, no. In New York, the most politically left candidate won the mayoral race, despite the Democratic establishment's efforts. So there's not much clarity for the Democrats. It just shows that the divide within America's two political parties, not just between them, is as strong as ever. And that's the bottom line.